look at the NCAA tournament, we can shift there now. When you talk about March Madness and you talk about the NCAA tournament, every team that got here has won some games, right? And when you're playing a lower seeded team, in a lot of cases, these teams have won their conference tournament, right? So these teams have won their conference tournaments, and then your other teams are teams that have a variety of different play styles that get the at-large bids. And based on how the committee ranks these teams, it can be a very different game, right? So we look to last season, Alabama plays a College of Charleston team that was a very fast-paced, up-tempo team. Then you play a Grand Canyon that was super grinded out, super physical. Those were two very different teams, right? The first game, I don't think we hardly saw Mohamed Diabate at all in that game. The second game, Mohamed Diabate had to have some of the biggest roles or else we were going to lose the game, right? It was a situation where you went from a game that was not super physical that you had to have to a game that you had to have every rebound because it may cost you the game. That's how the tournament works, even against a smaller team, whether it be an upset, whether it be a regular, the favorite makes it. No matter what it is, it's a styles make fights tournament, right? So when you look at these teams, you have to look at the play style in which they play, right? So first things first, you have Robert Morris. Robert Morris is a middle of the road team. They don't play super fast. They don't play super slow. They're 140th in the country out of 360 teams. So slightly faster than slow, but very central in this. They're actually a little faster on defense, a little slower on offense, which is a little odd. So they are used to playing a little faster, but I'm sure they have not seen a team to Alabama's pace this season. Very important to note, Nate Oates, has played Robert Morris on 2 occasions before. When he was at Buffalo, he lost the first matchup by 3. He won the second matchup by 15. So this is a situation where he does have some familiarity with this team and this coach, right? So it was the same coach when Nate played them back at his time in Buffalo. So this is a situation where this team won their conference tournament. They had the 6th longest active win streak. They have a 10-game winning streak coming into March Madness. But again, if you're playing against a team that is in March Madness, they had to have won their conference tournament. So at a minimum, especially when you're talking about a smaller team, 2, 3, 4 game winning streak at a minimum because they had to win their conference tournament to get here. But Robert Morris has not lost since February 2nd, and before that, they had not lost since January the 8th. However, by far, Alabama will be easily the toughest test they've had all season, right? That's to be expected. The toughest game they had this season, other than that, was they played West Virginia on the opening night of college basketball on that Monday, March 4th. They lost that game by 28 points. So this is a team that lost pretty handily to the only Power 5 team they have played this season. When you look at their KenPom page, they do a decent job at running teams off the 3-point line. They do a pretty good job at getting assists themselves. They turn over the ball a little bit. They're an okay rebounding team, but when you consider them as an okay rebounding team, that's against the teams they've faced, right? They've not faced a ton of great teams. They are a pretty short team. When you consider an average height, they are under the average for all the teams in the country. Alabama is, of course, one of the tallest teams in the country, which is why I said even if Grant Nelson doesn't play, we could slot in a Jaron Stevenson, a Mohamed Diabate, an Aiden Sherrill in that slot, and I think they would be more than fine. I don't think that we have to have Grant Nelson to be successful in this game, right? This is not going to be a situation where you have to have every big, fully ready, fully healthy to be able to win this game. They do have a couple of shooters. They've got 2 guys that are averaging over 40% from 3. They've got 2 other guys shooting 38% from 3. They are a team that's going to like to shoot some of them. Obviously, Alabama shoots much more than they do, but they do take a decent number of threes. They also have a guy in Cam Woods that is a self-admitted Alabama fan from Pinson Valley, played with played with some of the guys. I want to say Jalen Ibakwe. I may be wrong on that, but played with some of the guys over at Pinson Valley. Won a state title game in Alabama. Was on NC State's Final Four team last season and talked with some of our reporters about how he Was a huge fan of Alabama, watched all of our games. So this is, going to be the hometown kid being able to play against his team that he cheered on his whole life. So that is going to be an interesting note when you look at this game. Simply put, I think Alabama just outmatches them, right? We've not seen Alabama play a team in this level of KenPom, and for reference, they are 147th in KenPom. If we look at Alabama's teams they have faced, the last time they faced a team in the 130s, right? That's the closest reference we have, was South Dakota State and Kent State back in December. They won those games by 23 and 27 points, right? So just to give you a reference for where Alabama was at that moment, Alabama was beating teams of this ilk by around 25 points. Obviously, this team is going to have a lot to play for. They're coming on a hot streak, all those things that we've mentioned. So we absolutely can't take them not seriously. But I do think that if Alabama plays even to its kind of potential, Alabama wins this game very easily. I think that it would take a horrific game for Alabama to lose this game. Just going to be honest, I think that the style in which Alabama plays is going to give a team like this a lot of trouble. Then, when you move over to the St. Mary's Vanderbilt game, right? I think that Vanderbilt has a very good shot in that game. St. Mary's obviously the higher ranked team, so I do want to break down them as well, just because Alabama has not seen them this year, or really in recent memory. And so I want to talk about that. St. Mary's was actually the team that Alabama was supposed to play last season as the 5 seed. However, Grand Canyon knocked them off. So if St. Mary's can win their game this time, they will get their crack at Alabama. If not, Alabama plays Vanderbilt, a team in which we had a lot of success this season against. However, St. Mary's is a team that, if you are not aware, is coached by Randy Bennett, a legendary coach. He's been there many, many years, and is one of the slowest teams in the entire country. St. Mary's is a grinded-out defensive team. So when you think about a grinded-out defensive team compared to a team like Alabama, obviously it becomes that styles make fights we talked about. It becomes a situation of, do we think that Alabama will be able to do you think that Alabama is going to be able to exert its tempo? And how I look at tempo is I use KenPom from an analytics perspective when I talk about tempo, and I talk about number of possessions. And I generally look at what are some of the teams that Alabama has played that like to slow it down, and how is Alabama able to exert or not exert its pace on that team. And these are elite teams, right? The teams that are the slowest that Alabama has played are teams like Purdue. On the road, Purdue actually held Alabama to 68 possessions early in the season. Then you have a team like Houston. They held Alabama to lower possessions because it was 76, but it was in overtime. But then you have teams like Tennessee and Mississippi State and Texas A&M. All of those games, Alabama got over 70 possessions, and in the situation of Texas A&M, it was 79 possessions. We got to 77 against Mississippi State, 75 against Tennessee. Alabama was able to speed up a lot of teams that even are defensive and grinded out style teams, right? Those are some teams that when you think of teams in the SEC that like to grind it out, or just a really defensive, hard-nosed, physical team, those are those teams, and Alabama was able to speed every single one of them up. The last time Alabama had a game in sub 70 possessions was that Purdue game, right? So it's really tough for me to say, hey, Alabama is a team that's tempo can have a problem, because, like, for example, if I look to last season's team got held to 64 possessions against South Carolina, 66 against Liberty, 68 against Missouri. They ended up getting held to 63 against UConn in the championship game, right? They had some games later in the season again in SEC play in which teams were able to grind them out. Whereas South Carolina held us to under 60-something possessions last season, we get them to 74 this season, right? So Alabama has just done a much better job this season at keeping that tempo up. A lot of that has to do with LeBaron Philon and Aiden Holloway and having guys other than Mark Sears that can run the point and get going quickly. So it's just a way that our offense has run this season, but it is something to look at when you're looking at a team like St. Mary's that likes to grind you out. The reason I mention this is St. Mary's is a team that only plays about 6 or 7 guys. So when you're talking about tempo, number of possessions, how fast we play, that's something that definitely can wear on a team that has a lower depth amount. It also is a situation where when you're a team that is so methodical on offense and so slow on offense, at over 20 seconds per possession, it's a situation where if Alabama gets out to any level of a lead, it's going to be really, really difficult for St. Mary's to come back in that game, right? And as we know, Alabama is a team that can put points on you in a hurry. Now, St. Mary's has a little bit of an equalizer. They're 6th in the country at running people off the three-point line. They do play in a very weak conference. They have played some decent teams. They beat Gonzaga twice this season. They did lose to them in their conference tournament. They did also beat USC and Utah, as well as Nebraska. They lost to Arizona State, Boise State, Utah State, and San Francisco, right? So they did have some losses. None of their losses by double digits. Their biggest loss this season was actually by 7 points, right? So this is a team that has done a very good job of grinding teams out. The most points they've given up this season is in the low 70s. Yes, in the low 70s. It's actually 75 against Utah State. So this is a team that does not give up a ton of points. Again, they just have not played a team like Alabama. The fans of St. Mary's are going to point to Gonzaga as, hey, Gonzaga is a team that plays fairly quick and as a team that has a good offense. I would agree with that. Gonzaga is an adjusted tempo of 70.2. However, Alabama is an adjusted tempo of 74.9, right? Just a completely different paced team. Alabama does a great job speeding teams up and has done an incredible job this season of it. And they're on another level when you're talking about tempo. So in my mind, we are going to be able to speed up St. Mary's. And also at a bare minimum, I think Alabama is going to give St. Mary's some issues, especially inside the arc, right? St. Mary's is a decent 2-point defense team. However, as we know, Alabama is an elite 2-point offense team. St. Mary's does have a couple of bigger guys. They've got a 6'10", a 7'1" guy that plays some significant minutes. They do have some bigger players. However, again, I just think that Alabama is a team that St. Mary's has not played this season, and it would be a problem. Do I think that Randy Bennett coaches an incredible offense and a really good team? Absolutely. I think that St. Mary's is a good team and would give Alabama very much a challenge. However, I do believe in Alabama in that game. I do believe that Alabama would be able to have success in that game, and I think that Alabama would win that game. I don't want to say fairly handily, but I think that Alabama wins comfortably in that game, which would then set up a matchup with either BYU, VCU, Wisconsin, or Montana if Alabama was to win those first two, right? So we're just going to talk about those first two games today. Obviously, if Alabama wins those games, I will then break down the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 matchups and what Alabama may be facing. Alabama is paired with Duke in this bracket, so if we have a collision course with the number 1 seed in our bracket, it's going to be with Duke in Newark, New Jersey. That's going to be happening in that Elite 8 game. So that is the game that a lot of people have circled that they think is going to happen based on both teams' path to the Final Four. It kind of feels like a collision course for number 1 and number 2 is fairly likely in this one. But, obviously we have to play the games. Alabama has to be successful. Alabama needs to be healthy, and Alabama needs to play to their potential if they're going to try to make another Final Four run. Nate Oates was asked about expectations for this team, and he said Final Four or bust. He goes, I want to get to the, I consider it a disappointment if we don't get to the Final Four. And my expectations are to win games in the Final Four, not just make it there, right? So that is what the expectations are of the head coach, and that is what he is portraying to the team. He wants this to be a player-led team. He has 4 fifth-year seniors, and he has, telling them, hey, your next loss is your last loss. It is your last game that you will have in college basketball at the University of Alabama, playing college basketball at all. So What do you want to do with your team? Make it what you want to make it. The reason we brought you guys in was for this run right now. So, we need to be the toughest, hardest team playing out there. We cannot get out rebounded. We cannot get outplayed. We cannot get out physical. This is it, right? If you want to win it, let's prove it. So that is what we have to say when we're looking at this. I think that Alabama absolutely is capable of making another Final Four run. Obviously, if we do get set up with a game against Duke, that's going to be a very tough matchup. But both teams have to get there. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's take it game by game. These are kind of my general breakdowns. I am going to obviously have threads. I will do full player threads for Robert Morris for whoever our second round matchup is if we're able to get through Robert Morris. And then I will continue doing those pregame threads as well as predictions for every single game. So if you are interested in seeing those, please follow me over on Twitter. That's where I'm going to put those out. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I do appreciate all the support. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and I will see you in the next episode. Peace.